Ngā mihi nui. Good morning, greetings in the three official languages of our nation. It certainly is a privilege to have this opportunity amongst distinguished guests, friends and colleagues, and amongst other constitutional enthusiasts. This session has been primed as a debate, with me charged with making the case for the Republic and Dr. Cullen with defending the monarchy. But when I read the Herald on Sunday, Cullen, New Zealand should be a republic, I wondered whether at this point I should just sit down and claim victory.
No, you shouldn't read the Herald.
So true. I think too the conference organisers might be regretting actually inviting very much two pragmatists to this debate. A Republican monarchist, if I can suggest that might represent Dr. Cullen's position, and as some of my friends described me, a monarchist Republican. Because I must confess to having a picture of Her Majesty on my office wall. It's a very stylised one of her with a Māori moko. The painting etched with the date of 6 February 1840 in Roman numerals. And I think that, for me, captures that sort of great mystery about the debate about our Crown, our head of state. So, as soft advocates in our causes, I think we're unlikely to generate the same degree of spark that we would see in a debate between radicals on this issue. I think it's fair to say we agree on much, but I think there's still some very subtle differences. So I'm going to run through my paper and try and canvass the constitutional issues as I see them, the questions raised by the Republic, and to promote the Republican response. If you like, the why, who, what, when, how questions of the Republic. And I'll try and foreshadow, I think, the points of agreement and disagreement, and we can tease that out in the time that follows. But what's clear, and I think it's an important agreement between Dr. Cullen and me about this question, the question of the patriation of our head of state, is that we think it needs to be considered separately from the myriad of other constitutional reforms. Otherwise, it risks becoming an absolute mare's nest. And like one of the speakers at our last conference, and I'm pleased to see Dr. Andrew Ladley here today, I favour the simple, soft Republican approach. At its heart, it involves changing our head of state from a hereditary monarch based abroad to a local chosen by us. Promote the Governor-General from being our de facto head of state to a real head of state. Same powers, same functions, same responsibilities, same treaty obligations, same house. The only other essential change is the label for, if you like, the corporate entity that represents the state, the government and the peoples of New Zealand, from the Crown to something capturing that collective of the peoples of New Zealand, or our executive government. As Professor Brookfield famously said, we're already a de facto republic, and I'm saying let's reflect that reality. The minimum change necessary in order to patriate our head of state, no more, no less. And I judge that approach, and it's an approach which probably disappoints some of my more radical Republican colleagues, that approach is more consistent with our constitutional culture of pragmatic evolution. And that's that culture that's been identified by people like Dr. Matthew Palmer, Professor Joseph, and also the committee that was charged with examining our constitutional arrangements, pragmatic evolution. And I hope I've got Dr. Cullen nodding in agreement with the rejection of a much more aggressive full Republican agenda. But if we turn to those questions, the why question, this is hard for a soft Republican like me. We're not willing to concede that the existing legal structures and processes are broken. We're already a de facto republic, I said, as the Governor-General in reality discharges the functions of head of state. And when we speak of the Crown, by and large it's code for our executive government or the state. And the reality of our present political and constitutional balance is fine in my view. There's no need to turn that on its head. The points of difference are symbols and identity. The British anchor of the monarchy sits uncomfortably with our present-day vision of ourselves as a nation. We are communities with different demographics, different cultural mixes, and different aspirations from the community where the Queen resides. And I think, again, Dr. Cullen seems to concede this, but I think he doubts the importance of the head of state in that sort of mix of identity. For myself, I say if we value the ceremonial and community functions of the head of state, then the extent to which they, as the Governor-General head of state, can represent and reflect the values of the nation becomes important. The youth of today, and we heard from some of them today, remind us that the royal family do not represent us. They represent something different. Whether they be pop stars or champions of goodness or whatever, they lack the essential Kiwiness. And while the office of the Governor-General has evolved to manifest many of these Kiwi values, there is a limit to which I think it can continue to evolve when it's a subordinate role, anchored abroad in London. But that's not inviting radical change. It's more freeing the shackles to allow that pragmatic evolution to continue. It's a blending of our heritage with our modernity, and undoubtedly with the symbols of modernity becoming more dominant over time. The who question, that's the key change. No longer should the selection of the head of state be hereditary, discriminatory, and foreign, as is the case with our sovereign. One of us, please. And I continue to believe that the fact we will almost certainly not see someone Māori fill the role of head of state under our constitutional monarchy is one of the most powerful arguments for the Republic. So who then? Soft Republicans say this is easy. Elevate the now de facto head of state. The Governor-General becomes the real head of state. We do not even need to change the name of the office if we don't want to. But maybe over time we may gift the office something that reflects our indigeneity, our identity. We're also happy with the previous crop of office holders who have filled this office, and therefore we're not necessarily convinced by the need to open up that post to popular election. Nomination by Parliament on behalf of the peoples is sufficient, and consistent with that model of minimal change. A small tweak perhaps, the present selection process for the Governor-General is a bit uncertain and inadequate, and I think best practice suggests that the nominee should have that full confidence of the House. And in my paper I've proposed a super majority provision, and yes, I'm in agreement with Dr. Cullen that this should be applied whether or not we became a republic. And indeed I was with Lewis Holden of the Republican Movement before a select committee a couple of weeks ago proposing that exact change to the Governor-General bill, which is presently before the select committee. The next question is the what powers and responsibilities? Answer, the same as now. The model of soft republicanism is to imbue the new head of state and new entity that represents the Republic with the same constitutional powers and responsibilities. A generic novation of power and responsibility in legislation. No need to codify the conventions. The values of our office holders won't change. No need to remove the reserve powers. The reserve powers around government formation are working fine, and the theoretical powers to act contrary to advice won't suddenly become exercised counter to the democratic imperative. The so-called thorn in this transfer is the treaty, and I think Dr. Cullen, if I can foreshadow his remarks, worries that this is a complication, and it's shared by many, but I think these concerns are misplaced. As the treaty obligations have already been transferred, so too can they be transferred to the Republic. The reality is that nowadays it is the New Zealand's executive government that is responsible for discharging Queen Victoria's original compact with iwi and Hapu. That would continue under the model of the soft republic. The continuing legal and constitutional importance of the treaty would be addressed in legislation without promoting or diminishing its present legal status within our constitutional fabric. If you like, the constructive ambiguity remains. The status quo. Now, as someone who promotes the importance of symbols, though, I would be dismayed if this had the effect of diminishing the symbolism of the treaty. The extra legal status of the treaty and the associated honour of the Crown must be preserved too. Probably concede that this is probably a more important issue for Māoridom to be given comfort about, because it's they, iwi and Hapu, who have the benefit of that symbolism on the other side of the treaty relationship. But perhaps I'm a wee bit idealistic, but I can't see how it would change when we're attempting to reflect the realities of the now. and I hope Māoridom place due weight on the Republican model centred around minimalism and continuity. And I suggest that this be fortified in any Republican legislation by recognition of the treaty and the background preamble and foundation, as well as the treaty specifically being addressed in the legal and constitutional transfer responsibilities to the new Republic. Last couple of questions just quickly. Next, the when question. As a pragmatist, I'm drawn to Dr. Cullen's proposal of deferring any change to the passing of Queen Elizabeth, and I've thought this for some time. It's not particularly a principled Republican position. It's just an acknowledgement of some of the public fondness towards the present sovereign, and I think an allowance for the time needed to take the Republic issue to the people and to get our ducks in a row. And in my paper, I've suggested some statutory language which could give effect to that. But I think the important point is that the Queen's expected longevity is not a reason for us to rest on our laurels. We have been cursed by the mantra of inevitability. And I think we can now add the voice of Dr. Cullen to the voices of 3 former Prime Ministers, including one present now, who have proclaimed the inevitability of the Republic, but who have probably failed to take any real steps to make it happen. Finally, the how question. I think most Republicans recognise that this is a change which requires popular support, a referendum. Mm-hmm. I suspect the constitutionalists in the audience might have conflicting views about the arguments of the power of Parliament to effect the change, certainly by itself, and the need for any revolution, whether being real or technical. But I think the acceptance of a need for a referendum and the need to carry the people with us circumvents these theoretical arguments. I think the ultimate power of the people trumps, at least I hope. Garnering that popular support is more of my concern. Polls show strong support polls show support for the Republic is growing and is the strongest amongst our younger generation, some of whom we've heard from today. But if I return to my introductory remarks to close, I worry that the fact the numbers for the Republic aren't higher is due to an overcomplication of the change, a beat up by the opponents. It's much simpler than it's made out, and I think that when that message comes across, we will see support rise. That needs to be made clear in public discussion and debate, and it's a shame that earlier this year 68 MPs denied the public this important discussion when they voted down Keith Locke's Head of State referendum bill. So we need some catalysts for that discussion, and I hope today's debate might help. But I'm also drawn to the delicious irony of having a Royal Commission providing a blueprint for patriating our Head of State. We'll see. There are some other ideas about constitutional conventions and congresses and other things. But I think realistically, any move to a republic will only work if we quell the excitement of constitutional reformers to seize the window of opportunity to tinker with each and every constitutional nut and bolt. No need for a Rolls-Royce, a Toyota Corolla, a minimalist republic will be fine. Thank you.